I knew that I was in trouble the moment that I pushed on the door. I had entered the door less than 10 minutes earlier, slipping in quietly as another customer was leaving. A few more shoppers had come and gone in that time, just like I hoped. They had kept the woman behind the counter busy with sales and given me plenty of time to locate a few small items that could be slipped into my pockets without anyone noticing. Once I had procured 4 or 5 objects that I was sure that I could sell elsewhere, I would wave pleasantly to the oblivious owner and waltz right out the way I'd come in. That had been my intention anyway. No matter how hard I pushed on it, the door simply wouldn't budge. I took the liberty of locking the door remotely, the woman called over to me from behind the counter. I gritted my teeth and pressed my forehead against the glass. She hadn't been nearly as unaware of my actions as I had thought. Sighing, I turned to face her. "I take it that you aren't much of a connoisseur of antiques," she continued, her tone neither angry nor gloating as I would have expected. "In my line of work, it is a requirement. Those items that you pocketed are worth $20, maybe $30 total. I keep them on hand for individuals that want something that looks fancy but can't afford the real thing. The truly expensive items are inside the displays on the other side of the store." I wasn't sure what to say, so I kept my mouth shut. Years of hard living had taught me that I was liable to make a bad situation worse if I spouted off without thinking things through. "Do you see this coin?" the woman asked, pointing down into the glass case she was standing behind. "If I walked into this particular store with the aim of stealing something, this is where I would start." She motioned to me to come closer. I hesitated for a moment before slowly walking over to the case. It wasn't like I could leave, and besides, it might make it easier for me to convince her to let me go if I played along with her little game. I looked down at the coin she was indicating. It was badly damaged, and the corners were bent inward. "It really isn't much to look at," she said as she voiced my unspoken thought. "Looks can be deceiving, however. It's pure silver, and it was minted centuries before any civilization known to man ever dreamed of doing such a thing. An ancient currency for an ancient civilization. That alone would make it priceless, but there's even more to it than that." I found myself being drawn in by the woman's words. Her voice had a certain cadence that was almost hypnotic. I glanced at her when she wasn't looking. She was tall and thin, and she was wearing a gray suit with a black tie. "The society that this coin comes from was class-based," the woman told me. "The modern world is much the same, of course, but this particular society took things even further. Each class had different currency issued to them. Brass for the lower class, iron for the middle class, and gold for the upper class. Silver was used by members of the priesthood. They were the only ones given money that bore the image of the god the people worshipped." It was difficult to see into the image imprinted onto the coin, but I could just make out a vaguely humanoid shape. There seemed to be a number of limbs or growths extending from the body. I resisted the urge to shudder. "Take my property out of your pockets and put it onto the counter," she instructed. I slowly removed the objects in question from my coat and placed them on the glass. She watched me silently as I did so. When I had finished, she picked them up and moved them to an empty shelf on the wall behind her. "Thank you for not insulting me by trying to keep 1 or 2 of them hidden," she said. "That gives me hope that we can be civilized about this whole thing. Now then, I am Amelia Kane. Your name is—" I stared at her but didn't answer her question. She sighed. "Perhaps I was wrong, and we need to get the authorities involved." "Charlie," I blurted out. "Charlie Beddington." "There we are. Mr. Beddington, I would like to offer you a choice." "What kind of choice?" I asked, blinking in surprise. The kind of choice that may benefit us both. Your first option is for me to handle this incident as the petty theft that it is. I call the police, and you are arrested and charged. I would imagine that this wouldn't be your first time in their custody. I chewed on the inside of my lip. Ah, I see that your time around the local authorities hasn't been pleasant. I have to admit that I don't have a very high opinion of them myself. Were you arrested for theft? No, that's not right. You are clearly too clever and careful for that. Apparently not clever enough, I muttered. You're not being fair to yourself. You had no way of knowing that you had chosen the absolute worst mark you possibly could have. Back to your criminal record. Based on the slight shaking of your hands, your low body weight for your height, and any number of smaller things, I'm going to hazard a guess that you are addicted to crystal methamphetamine. What a shame. Your previous arrests must have been related to that. I stared at her in shock. How could you have possibly... I know how to use my mind to think through things, but that isn't important right now, the woman interrupted. What is important is the second option that I'm about to give you. I can call the police, or I can give you something in exchange for your promise to never set foot in my store again, and you can be on your way. Not waiting for my answer, she reached into the display case and removed a small vial. It was only a few inches tall, and it looked like it was made of real crystal. A silver liquid filled it up to just below the halfway point. She set it down gently on the glass and tapped the stopper with the tip of her finger. This, she said with the faintest trace of a smile on her lips, is what I believe you addicts refer to as the ultimate high. I reached out for the vial to examine it closer, but she put her hand over top of it to stop me. I came across it at an estate sale that I was in charge of. That's where all of the items in the store have come from. They're items that I acquired from the families at a discounted rate. The chemist that first created this didn't give it a proper name, but I've heard it referred to as nostalgia in a bottle. I personally prefer the other name that it goes by, remembrance. When you take it, you relive the best moments from your life. I don't mean that you simply recall them. I mean that it's like you're really experiencing them again. You're not, of course, but it certainly seems that way when it's happening. She picked up the vial and held it out towards me. So, do we have a deal? She asked. I nodded. It was better than the alternative. I'm afraid that isn't good enough. I need to hear you say it. Okay, yeah, I said with another nod. We have a deal. I get this, and I never come back. Good. She gently put the crystal bottle into the palm of my hand. A pleasure doing business with you, my dear. When you want to use it, put 3 drops on the tip of your tongue. No more, no less. 3 drops. Now run along. With a final look at the store owner, I turned and hurried out the door. I quickened my pace once I was out on the sidewalk, and I was practically running by the time I reached the end of the block. People on the street were giving me strange looks. I ignored them. All that mattered was putting as much distance as I could between me and that damn store.